been giving you this toolkit to put different things into for your parenting. And so just curious, how are the experiments going? Any stories or any wins or even things that didn't quite happen? Yes.
I have a win.
You have a win.
Yeah,
We like wins.
because Adam was at camp, so of course he was tired when he got back. And I think this was maybe last Saturday morning. And I started going down his hallway to say good morning, and he started screaming at me and saying, "Don't come in my room!" And I'm like, and I said, "Okay, I'm not gonna come in your room, then you don't need to come in my room either. And until I feel respected, I don't think I'm gonna do anything for you today." And it worked like a charm.
Wonderful.
Maybe an hour or two later, he came in. He said, "Grandma, can I come in your room?" And I said, "Yes." And before this, he was always in and out of my room. So this boundary that he gave me for his room worked real well to turn it around and make it for my room. And so I said, I'd be glad not. I didn't want to go in his room in the first place. Legos everywhere that you step on, you can't even walk in his room. So then later, a couple hours later, he comes over to my room and he goes to the doorway and he says, "Grandma, can I come in?" And I said, "Yes." And he comes over and gives me a hug and says, "I'm sorry. Now can I go play with Jet?" And I said, "No. And now I feel like you're manipulating me. I don't feel respected exactly." I said, "It might take me a day to get over this, and then we'll see how it goes." And complete change. Now he's very careful. He is, yelling at me. I don't expect it to last, but it was good for me to take control.
Yeah, and you did it calmly. You yelled back. That sounds good.
I said that was a good idea. I'm not gonna go in his, I didn't wanna go in there anyway, so today I said, if you want me to do your laundry, you're gonna have to bring your laundry over here to the laundry room, because of course, I'm not gonna go in your room.
Right. You had a win-win-win.
Another win.
That's right. Good. Any other experiments that either went well or went awry? That means they failed. Yes, the rye type of experiments. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, let's make sure. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. Keep the experiments going. Try to keep them. See how things go. We're going to go a step further with what we talked about last week, what we started last week, where it was this idea of giving the kids an opportunity to think, and actually giving them a chance to think more than you have to think as an adult. And that sounds like kind of like what you did, Linda. You gave him a chance to really think through how he was going to work out this situation and get you back on his good side. Yeah, he had to do a lot of thinking about that. May even have to keep doing it. So, keep doing some of those, keep thinking through some of those. We talked about, and we'll illustrate a little bit more here in a minute, of this idea of enforceable statements. I tell you another story. One of the little boys that, he used to be a little boy, he's now a big boy, but one of the little boys around here, very precocious kind of little boy, always into stuff. Just always. And Angela was working up here one day. I don't know if it was Vacation Bible School or if it was just a Bible class that she was teaching, but she was pushing a cart through the hallway, and the little boy came up and said, "I want to ride the cart." And so Angela said, "Well, I'll be happy to let you ride the cart if you will sit there and keep your hands in your lap and be still." Now this boy doesn't know how to be still for anything. Man, they got all around the building in that cart. He didn't move because he wanted to ride the cart. And he knew that she laid the boundaries. She laid the limits for him. You can ride the cart, but here's the limits. You got to keep your hands in there. But remember what we talked about. The only one you can really control is yourself. And so what you invite your kids to is to understand, I'm going to control myself and I'm going to control my limits, and I'm inviting you to participate in those limits if you want to get what it is that you want to get. And the real key on this idea of getting them to think is getting them to think through their choices. Everything we talked about really kind of comes back to that initial discussion about choices. Giving the kids a chance to make choices in their lives and to make good choices for their lives. And so whenever we use this particular part of of love and logic, getting them to think, it's helping them to think through those choices. It's, remember those enforceable statements, I'll be happy to do this, I'll be glad to do this for you whenever I feel treated with respect when the chores are done. Well, how about this, Dad? And when the lawn is all mowed, I'll take off the handcuffs and you can take your concert. That was a joke. That don't go and do that one. But again, the idea of giving them the limit and inviting them to be a part of that. Like we talked about last week, we can spend all of our time and give all of our focus to whether or not we're keeping control of our kids. And the more that we try to keep control, the more our kids will respond with, you can't control me. I mean, just look at what's happening at the hillside thing here. Don't get political, but look what happening in our country right now. The more there are those that are in power that want to put more and more controls on us, what is our reaction? Push back. You can't control me. I'll show you. And that happens in our homes on a smaller scale. And so we can really focus on this one, trying to keep control and keep losing it. Or we can focus on ways to effectively set and enforce limits that will lay this lifelong foundation for them setting limits for themselves. And we do that by taking care of ourselves first, taking care of our own limits, and inviting kids to participate in those limits with us. And so we talked about this idea of fighting words versus thinking words, this idea of the thinking words say no to something by saying yes to something else. I'm happy for you to do this. I'm happy for you to do this. And in that is implied what the boundary is and what the no statements are. You don't have to always give them. Now, did anyone pay attention to your using of thinking words and fighting words? In particular, watching the eyes of your kids. No?
It's so much more fun to practice on your spouse.
It's what?
More fun to practice on your spouse.
Oh, well, how'd that go this week?
Great, he's buckling his seatbelt again.
Yeah.
Didn't take you as long this time.
Oh, that's good. Again, the idea here is just watch your kids' eyes. If you want to know whether you're using fighting words or thinking words, watch their eyes. Because if you're using fighting words, those eyes will kind of light up and you'll see the fire and oh yeah, let's bring it on. Thinking words, oftentimes will have them stop and they will kind of look up because they got to get their brain going and then they make an action. Again, the difference between fighting words and thinking words. Fighting words tell a child what he or she must do and oftentimes start with you will do or you have to. It always kind of directs it at them. The thinking words tell a child what he or she may choose to do. And usually starts with things like, I am happy to do this for you, or feel free to do this or that. It starts with something that focuses on what my actions and my behaviors, those things I can control are going to be when you choose these particular behaviors and actions, these particular choices. So it gets us right back to that idea of enforceable statements. Telling a child what I will do, not what they have to do, and telling a child what I will do and what they are welcome to be a part of. Here's some of the examples. I'll be glad to do this or that for you when I feel treated with respect. Feel free to do this or that whenever this happens. Feel free to discuss this with me whenever you can talk as calmly as I can. And if you try that this week, did you? Good. Huh? Yeah. And? 2 minutes. For you or for? Yeah. So, yeah. Because you got to stop for a minute and you got to think about your own reaction to something.
When I feel like I'm talking calm, my wife still tells me that it's called fake personality or whatever.
So calmly is relative.
No.
Yeah. What's calm for you may not be calm for somebody else.
Yelling, I'm not yelling, I'm projecting. Yelling is different. That's like 11. That's 11 on it. I think it was 11.
Now you remember the big technique that'll help you keep that any anger or outburst projecting from going too far. And that's the emphatic statement. Oh, man, how sad. What a bummer. Because not only does it turn on the brain inside the kid, but it turns on your own brain to remind you, oh yeah, I'm not going to get mad in this situation. Well, I may get mad. I'm not going to demonstrate my anger. I'm not going to let it out this time. And you may have to practice it over and over and over and over again. Some others, it's time for you to be in bed because I feel better knowing that you've had a full 8 hours of sleep. Or it's time for you to be in bed. Feel free to stay up as long as you need to, as long as I don't see you or hear you. Now remember, you're going to get choices that make you deliriously happy. But if you give your kids a chance at that one a few times, they will learn on their own. Especially if you get them up at 7:30, 8 in the morning, or school gets started earlier than that, and they realize, yeah, that sleep would have been really good for me last night. Your mother's at nighttime again at 8 o'clock. Feel free to stay awake in the room where we can't see you or hear you, that kind of thing. So, but the kids are going to test us. Understand, anytime you try these techniques, the kids are going to push back. Kids like this routine that we establish at home, even if it's crazy, even if it's one that's not particularly healthy or one that's not particularly comfortable, it's still what they're used to. It's their balance, it's their homeostasis. And just like with anything else, if you upset that balance at home, even if it's for a healthy reason or it's a more pleasant environment, kids are liable to push back on it because that's not what I know. So they're going to test us. It's kind of like this kid right here. How about one more strike? You ever hit the kid? How about one more time? What are you going to do? What do you do when the limits are tested? How do you handle it whenever you say, feel free to choose this or that, or I'll be happy to do this for you whenever I feel treated with respect and the chores are done. And they respond with something like, well, you just don't love me anymore. Or, I hate this. Why do we have to do this? Now, what's the kid trying to push you to do? Argue. Especially if that's the norm. If that is how things go in this house, because typically whenever the arguing starts, the kid can take you off of the subject, they can take you away from the focus, and they start feeling like they've got control again. All right? And that's really, they're trying to push you back into some old patterns, whether it's arguing, whether it's walking away, whether it's giving in, whether it's all that manipulative kind of thing. So what do you do whenever the limits are tested? Because any kid that's worth keeping is going to test the limits. Let me just tell you that right now. If you think your kid is messed up because they test the limits, no, that means they're worth keeping. Because every kid is going to test the limits. So the important technique for this one is we're going to talk about brain drain, because that's what the kids are doing. They start to argue, well, you just don't love me anymore. Oh, I hate you. Or, well, it's my life. I don't know why I have to buckle my seatbelt. Or, can you think of some of the things that kids telling you to try to get you off topic? I don't want to eat this. Why do I have to keep my room clean? Dad doesn't clean up the garage.
I bought that candy with my money. There's no reason why I can't eat all that candy today.
See, you heard it.
That was kind. That was an example from an hour ago.
And what they're doing is you can just feel the brain just start draining out of your head. All the energy start coming out, which we'll talk about here next week. But you just, so what you do is you go with it. You go brain dead. If you don't want to argue with your kid, if you don't want to give in to that impulse, just go brain dead.
I just said, talk to Aunt Kendra about it. I defer to Kendra a lot.
You try to pass
Pass
the
the
buck
buck,
over
yep.
there, didn't you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, brain drain sounds something like this. I hate you. I said, oh man, I stink to be you. It's just one real quick one-liner sometime. It can be something like, let me pick up a few others over here. Your kid says something like, you know, you don't love me anymore. You say, well, I hope you get over that. I hate, you know, it's bad whenever you don't feel like your parents love you. Just go on. Don't argue with them. Just meet the ridiculous with the ridiculous. Or, where's that nice mother I used to have? They say, well, that's pretty good. Hope you get used to the new me. You know, go ahead. Go along with it. It's not fair. What do you do whenever your kid says, it's not fair?
No, it's not. Life is not fair.
Well, yeah. You can even kind of shorten it less. Yeah, probably so. Oh man, probably so. Or you just don't care about me. Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't get into it with them. You just let your brain go dead and just kind of go along with it. Or you get into the I knows. You just don't love me. I know. What do you mean you know? I know. Well, you don't let me do that. I know. Well, what kind of? I don't know. I know. That's a good one. Just, I know. I handed out the handout last week, and if you didn't get it last week, it's the one about that's an option. It's about the parent that whenever the kid said, well, if you don't give me if you don't raise my allowance, then I may just have to go sell drugs or something. And this mom just said, well, that's an option. What do you mean that's an option? Yeah, that's an option. You don't want me to go sell drugs, do you? No, I didn't say that. That is an option. It is. It's an option. May not work well for you, but it's an option. See, what kids want to do is drag you into that argument, drag you back into those old patterns. Just go with it and just say, yeah, you're right, that's an option. Yeah, next week we'll take that one a step further, because next week we will talk about a technique that was one of Angela's favorites as our kids were growing up. And some of you in here, I know, will do really well with it, because it's really good for people who like drama. Not living in drama, but like to act out drama, you know, like to go above and beyond, that sort of thing. We'll talk about another one this week that was also one of Angela's favorites. And I had to go along with it. I'll tell you why as we get further into it. But just remember the brain drain. You think, did God ever use brain drain with his people? I think he probably did sometimes. I mean, you look at the story of Job, and God just listens patiently while Job just goes on and on and on and on. He never answers Job's questions. He never gets into an argument with Job. Now he finally says, all right, Job, my turn. And he says, think about this. But he never gets into the argument with Job. He just kind of lets him rant and rave for a while. The psalmist does the same thing. The psalmist just pours out his heart. He just actually just gets angry sometimes. I think it's the prophet Habakkuk who does the same thing, that argues with God, says, God, are you really like this? And God just patiently listens and just goes brain dead until the person is ready to listen and ready to talk about something. Well, consider this mom. She's pushing the cart going through the store, and little boy sticks his tongue out at the sister and says, Mom, I want to ride with Robin. She says, I asked if you wanted to share a cart, but you said no. She said, well, I want to ride. There's no more room. There's no room for you now, Meredith. She sits down. She says, then I'm going to sit here. That's fine. I'll see you later. You hear the brain drain? Off she goes. Then what happens? See some strangers go by. She looks around. She says, Mama! During the checkout line, she says, tough love is tough on everyone. I will tell you that what you want to do with your kids is you want to be able to present to your kids that you can and give the message to your kids that you can handle anything without breaking a sweat. Now you may have to go into your room and fall apart later, But on this, you can just break, you can just do it, you can handle anything that they give you, without breaking a sweat. And so that gets us tonight to what's called a strategic training session. The strategic training session, I mean, teaching limits to our kids is pretty easy when things are calm, right? But it's when things are not calm anymore, whenever things get real irritating, when things get frustrating. And would you agree that there are times that our kids really know how to frustrate us? In fact, you can kind of look back and see how they've done it in the past, and you can predict how they're going to frustrate you in the future. Some of it will be tonight, some of it will be tomorrow, but over the next couple of weeks, your kids are going to do some things that are predictable, that irritate you, that frustrate you, that really get on your nerves. So what are you going to do about it? Besides fall apart and scream at the kid and try to go on. Well, let me give you an example here. Her name is Laura. Laura had this little girl, we're going to call her Abby. And Abby was one of those little girls that every time, she didn't mind going to the store if it was something to get for her. But anytime Laura took her to the store where Laura needed to pick up something, whether it be grocery shopping, or maybe she was looking for clothes for herself, or maybe it was something else, then Abby knew how to make the shopping trip really just miserable. I mean, she'd start off, why do we have to go here? I'm tired. Can we go home now? Are you finished yet? You gotta find some, I'm just on. And Laura just never was able, first of all, to enjoy shopping. But secondly, she'd always wind up going home and didn't have everything she needed because either she got frustrated and left early, or she got all flustered and forgot some of the things that she needed. So Laura started talking to some friends and started putting a plan together. Well, one day, she decides she's going to go to the store. And they walked into the store, and just as predictable as you can imagine, Abby says, Mom, I want to go home now. I'm tired. And so Laura stops and said, now, Abby, I told you that we've got to come, and I've got some things that we need to pick up. We'll go home as soon as I'm finished. But I tell you what, if you can't make the shopping experience joyful for me today, then you'll just have to sit in your room while I do my shopping. Now, what's Abby going to think about that? Yeah, right. You drove all the way here. You're going to take me home. No, that's not going to happen. So they take a few more steps, and Abby says, Mom, I need a drink of water, and I can't walk anymore, and can you get me something? And so Laura just calmly said, okay, Abby, just hold on right here. I guess it's time for you to go sit in your room. And Abby's kind of, what? So Mom pulls out her phone, and she pushes a few buttons, and she says, yeah, shopping's not fun today. Please come. And she put her phone away. Imagine Abby's surprise whenever through the door comes Laura's best friend. And she walks over to Abby and says, oh, Abby, Mama called me and said the shopping's not fun today. Why don't we go home? You can sit in your room while she finishes her shopping, and then Mom will be home later. So she takes her by the hand, and out the door they go. Laura later remarked, she said, that was the first day that I've been able to enjoy shopping in forever. What Abby didn't know is that Laura had spent the night before talking to her best friend and saying, I know what's going to happen, and I need your help. Are you willing to help me? And the friend said, well, sure. She said, well, I'm going to give you a call, and I'd love for you to be right there so you can come in and take Abby and take her to the house. And I don't want her to have any fun at the house. I want her to sit in the room until I get home. Would that be okay? She said, oh, sure, I'll be glad to help you out. Well, the next time that Laura needed to go to the store, Abby walked through the door with her, and she started into it again. Mama, I don't want to go shopping today. I want to play with my friends. Abby, would you like to stay here and shop with me, or would you like to go and sit in your room until I get back? And Abby's eyes got really wide, and her mouth got shut. They had a good day shopping that day. We'll call it a strategic planning session. What it does is it helps us provide discipline that our children need. See, discipline has gotten a bad word. We don't like discipline because we always kind of associate it with punishment. But we're not talking about punishment here. We're talking about providing those boundaries and those limits and training for our kids. It's really the word training is what we're looking at. Training to help them learn how to self-discipline, how to self-train their lives, how to give them those choices so that they know how to control their own lives. It's a really important skill that I'm afraid most of our kids have no idea how to do anymore because parents don't take the time to train. So listen to this story about another mom, or a couple of 2 or 3 stories actually, about strategic training session and what this looks like.
I like the idea of the training sessions, Jim. It reminds me of the kind of training you get on the job. And if it works there, why wouldn't it work at home?
See, parents are expecting an awful lot of themselves if they think that they can just react effectively to everything that happens with kids. It's far better if we can cut down the number of things we have to react to by kind of observing our kids and thinking about what's really happening. And we'll see patterns in the way they attack us in the store or at bedtime or at the table. We see those patterns, then we can start planning ahead. Then if we can have a few of these strategic training sessions along the way, they cut down the need for us to have a lot of reactions to things that happen. I mean, the kids are a little more cautious about how they approach us. It's kind of like in a football team. When the other football team changes its strategies, then the opposing team is a little more cautious about what they're doing. And this happens with the kids. So what we want to do here is always say to ourselves, I'm going to work on this problem when I have the energy, when I have the emotional stability, and when I have some resources to back me up. So that means I'm probably not going to deal with it today. And when I lower the boom on this, in other words, when the lesson is really learned, that's going to come like a lightning bolt right out of the blue. It's the last thing that get expected, and he will remember it for the rest of his life. And we're not doing something mean. If we were doing something mean and punitive, I would say that would be a horrible way to work with kids. But what we're doing is just taking good care of ourselves. We've got the empathetic response. We've got the consequence. Oh, that's really sad that worked out that way. And we have a child who's doing a lot of thinking about how he or she is going to act in that situation next time. You'll hear some examples of varieties of strategic training sessions in these next situations here. Well, you ever have trouble with your kids acting up in the backseat of the car? I had some friends write to me. Well, I think they're friends. I hope they're friends. I never met them before, but they'd heard one of these tapes. And so they wrote to me from Kansas City saying, we were on the freeway and you can't throw your kid out on the freeway. And my husband kept saying, what does Faith say? What does Faith say? And she says, I don't know. He says, try to use as few words as possible. So Dad says, I got an idea. He pulls the car off to the side of this freeway where it's relatively safe, gets out of the car and says to the kids, stay here. He and the wife go up on this little grassy knoll and they sit there and they visit and point things out like this. And pretty soon they hear something down the car that sounds like, shut up, they're never going to come back if you don't shut up. Pretty soon they got quiet down there and got in the car and drove off. She said about a half an hour later, Dad's driving in the far left-hand lane. The kids are starting to act up a little bit, but not enough for anybody to be worried about. And Dad, for some reason, changed lanes, and one of the kids panicked. There he goes again. I had a friend listen to all of this, and she decided, we're going to have a training session tomorrow. She's got these kids who are just something. She said, I can't drive anywhere without them hanging out the windows, yelling at other motorists, telling other people how to drive, flipping the bird, the whole works. She said, it's so embarrassing, I can't stand it. So she was ready for him the next day. She pulled up, she got out of the car, she says, okay, everybody out. Now there's only one problem. Staring at 2 teenagers about his size. And they said, no way, you can't make us get out. And she looked and she said, boy, they're right. Then, like all good consultant parents, she started to buy time. In other words, she started backpedaling, and the first thing she said was, did I blow this? Did I forget to ask you in a nice way? She said, oh, you're asking a nice way. And you're not going to do it? No way. You can't make us get up. Oh, boy. I thought it would work. They said, well, work on us. No, I thought it would work. Oh, boy. I guess I better think this over. And they said, yeah, you better think it over a whole bunch. She said, oh, boy. Would you guys mind if I walk across the street to that restaurant, get a cup of coffee while I'm thinking this over? And these smart aleck kid says, Mom, whatever turns you on, you just gotta go for it. So she said, thank you, and she walked across the street. And they're immediately playing their little radios, and they're having a wonderful time to show her it doesn't bother us, you can't get us, right? Pretty soon they notice she's gone 15 minutes. Pretty soon 20 minutes. Pretty soon they're saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? And suddenly something very strange across the street. Mother's best friend is driving out in front of the restaurant. Out comes Mom in the car, off she goes, run away. Rule number one, taking good care of myself, and the bigger my kids get, the more I have to fall back on that. She said, when I thought when they got home they were going to be madder than hornets. She said, was I ever ready for them? And they walked in, they did not say one word. She said, months have gone by, they haven't said one word. She said, I think they're going to bring it up at some family reunion. Hey, Mom, remember that time? Oh.
GD training session, remember, this is why you can't do real discipline just on the spur of the moment. It takes time, it takes energy. And so whenever you do a strategic training session, you're going to take care of yourself by giving it the time and giving yourself the time to really think it through and to do it well. And what you need to do is make sure that you pick one specific issue that you're going to train on. This is not going to be, we're going to train on lots of different misbehaviors or train on lots of different issues. You're going to pick one thing. See, training is so important. Proverbs 10:17, he who heeds discipline shows the way of life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray. Proverbs 12, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. And then Proverbs 29, discipline your son and he will give you peace. He will bring delight to your soul. So, what do you do about a strategic training session? Again, strategic training sessions are particularly for those behaviors that, number one, are the more irritating and frustrating kind of behaviors. They're the ones that are repeated often. I mean, you just, and they're predictable. You can just predict it's going to happen. You can say, yeah, I know this is what's going to happen next time this happens, and I know this is coming up. There are going to be those things that are not necessarily those, in this case, that are a safety issue for a child. We're going to handle those other ways. These are just things that they need to learn how to control themselves and how to have a better relationship with you and how to behave better around you. And so, what do you do in a strategic training session? What are the steps? Well, number one is you're going to research the situation. When does the child do these behaviors? Does it happen during a certain time of day? Does it take place whenever the child is going through a certain kind of something going on in their life? Or does it happen whenever something's going on with me? Maybe it always happens when I'm tired, or whenever I can't think straight, whenever I'm busy, whenever I'm distracted, or whenever you're going to research the situation. Is my mood a factor to it? Is it a certain place that this always happens? Is it a certain time of day, but is it a certain day of the week? You're going to kind of research the situation to see what's the pattern in this behavior. You may find on some behaviors, oh, well, it just happens all the time. I can't figure out anything about this one. But what you'll usually find is that there's some trigger to it. And again, sometimes it'll be me. This is what my child does to get my attention. Or this happens when we go to a certain place. For example, Lori, our youngest, had this problem where she would go, anytime we'd go to some place like JCPenney's or Kohl's or any clothing store, she did what any good kid does, and she starts playing in the clothes racks. Kids ever do that? They start, running in between all the hangers and stuff like that, and you turn around and say, where did she go now? So half of your time is trying to find where this kid went. And so we figured out, the place is when we go shopping. Why? Well, that wasn't necessarily important, except we knew that it caused us to focus on her, and it kept her from getting bored. All right, so we kind of had to research the situation, figure out what's going on with the kid and why, or what kind of triggers are there for this. Once you research the situation, then you need to call a friend. I've got this behavior and I'm trying to figure out what to do. I need to have a training session. I need to try to break my child of this behavior. Got any ideas? And so you call not just one friend, but call 2 or 3 or 4 and just say, hey, what would you do in this situation? How do you think you would do this? So Angela and I sat down about it, and we kind of talked about maybe some solutions, some things we could do. I think Angela probably called a couple of friends of hers and said, your kids ever do this? What do you do about it? Maybe even call their mom and say, you know what should I do about this? Are you good? Don't feel like you're in this on your own. I mean, we're going to depend on each other for training sessions like this. So try to get as many different ideas as you can. After you get those ideas and you start kind of narrowing them down and say, oh, I really like this one. Then you start asking the question, what might go wrong? Okay, so I've picked this particular option. This is what I'm going to do. What could go wrong about that? So you're going to start calling those friends back. You say, well, I told you I had this situation that I'm trying to work on, trying to do this training session with my child. I decided to do this. What could you think might go wrong with this? And so start coming up with some ideas, hearing from them. Well, this could happen, or that could happen, or you don't want to be left, because if you get into a situation where you're trying a training session and they find that loophole or they find their way around it, well, now you're kind of looking like a wimp, and you just say, now what do I do? We want to try to find as many of those different things that could go wrong, and then number 4, then you're going to start plugging all the holes. By plugging holes, you're going to start coming up with those those things that you're going to do if this takes place. Okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure I've got this in place so that this won't happen, or so that this isn't able to happen. So they're going to plug all the holes. Number 5 is, I'll know I'm ready because I cannot wait to pull it off. That's the nice thing about this one. Strategic training sessions are fun because you put together a plan and you know you're ready because you're confident in it. And you say, hey, I can't wait to try this. Let me tell you about Lori. So Angela and I had visited about it and said, okay. We came up with a plan. Our kids, when they were growing up, loved garage sailing. So we'd go out on Saturday morning and our kids, they would take their money and in a wallet, their purse, or something like that, and they'd go garage sailing with us too. And of course, they were always the best at it. I mean, they could go up to anybody and there'd be this, $10 game or something, and they say, I got 50 cents, would you take 50 cents? Oh, sure, honey, here, go ahead and have it. I mean, they were perfect going garage sailing with. And Lori was the one who loved it more than anyone. And she was the best bargain hunter and bargain maker. She just had those, blue eyes, and she just smiled at it, would you take this and you will thing? But why can't I do that? So we were all excited. Friday night, Angela got the kids together. All right, kids, we're going to head out first thing in the morning. We're going to go garage sailing. So all the kids, yay, garage sailing, that's great. They go and they get their stuff ready, go to bed. Saturday morning comes, and had breakfast. It's time to walk out the door and go garage sailing. Here comes Caleb out the door. Here comes Matthew. He's going out the door. Here comes Lori. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, Lori. Now, Angela says, Lori, I am so sorry. Didn't I tell you? She said, what? Didn't I tell you you can't go today? What? No, Lori. See, we went shopping the other day. And you keep running through all the clothes and stuff like that. And I gotta tell you, I get worried when you do that because I turn around and I don't know where you are. And I think maybe somebody has taken you and taken you home with them, or that I'm not gonna be able to find you. And that just makes me really sad to think that I could lose you like that. She said, until I can trust that you're gonna stay with me when we go shopping somewhere, I can't take you shopping with me. And so you're gonna have to stay here at the house with Daddy while we go garage sailing. Thank you for understanding. Walk out the door. Now, you understand, Angela had to plug all her holes. are you willing to stay here with a crying kid while we go garage sailing
And not make it fun.
and not make it fun? Okay. And then so the door closes and Lori's up again. Oh my God, scratching on the door. Oh my God. I know, this is so sad. And that lasted about 5 minutes. And then she had a few chores she had to do. She didn't get to do any. We didn't play any games and have any fun. But Angela and the kids, they go garage selling, have a great time, come back home. Didn't say another thing about it. So this is where you don't come back now. What did you learn? What will you do next time? No, you just leave it. Said, oh, we had a great time. Sure hope you can go with us again sometime. Well, we didn't know if that worked or not. So next time we went clothes shopping, Lori stayed pretty close to us. And then she started to go for the clothes again. Angela said, Lori stopped and turned around and stayed right next to Mom. Now, understand, we were pretty fortunate at that time, because sometimes you may have to do the training session a couple of times before it finally takes. But this time, she wanted the garage sailing so badly, she put two and two together and says, okay, if I'm going to choose this, then I'm also going to have to choose this behavior over here. And we really didn't have any trouble with her going through the clothes after that one training session. It worked really well. There's a few other examples of training sessions out there. Anybody read the book, Miss Nelson is Missing? Miss Nelson is Missing is a wonderful story about a strategic training session. See, Miss Nelson is Missing is the story about this teacher named Miss Nelson. And Miss Nelson has a particularly difficult class that she's dealing with this year. And Miss Nelson's such a sweet teacher and wants to do such fun things with the kids, but the kids just won't let her do it because they misbehave so badly. And so one day, Miss Nelson is not in school. They have a substitute. Her name is, do you remember this? What's the teacher's name? A sub's name? Yeah. I'm having a hard time remembering it now. What was it?
Viola Swamp.
Viola Swamp. Miss Swamp, that's right. Viola Swamp shows up to teach the class. And she does not make it fun. She is a drill sergeant of a teacher, and she makes sure the kids behave correctly and do what they're supposed to. She is not a fun teacher at all. So that when Miss Nelson gets back to school, all the kids are so thankful to have Miss Nelson back. They behave so nicely. When they start kind of getting out of hand again, Viola Swamp may just make an appearance again. Come to find out that Viola Swamp's outfit is hanging in the closet of Miss Nelson. Training session. Or how about this one? Now, this one is maybe an example of one that doesn't go so well. Been there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What do you do with a kid like that?
Where are your hands?
That's right.
I did that one.
You did this one?
Hannah is my Lord,
Yeah, yeah.
very much so.
Well,
And we started having one of those in the middle of Walmart, and I just turned around and walked around to the next aisle.
What's this like? What's this mom?
When you feel the first signs of a cold, use Vicks First Defense. It's a new microgel that attacks the cold virus before it has a chance to turn nasty. New Vicks First Defense. Attack is the best form of defense.
Why don't you try that one sometime? Now there's a strategic training session right there. Sam had a teenage daughter named Casey. And Casey, depended on her parents to get her places anytime she would go someplace, whether it was practice at school, whether it be getting to school, maybe it was, you know, to go buy a pair of jeans or to go, she just needed her parents to take her because she didn't have driver's license. So they became her taxi service. Well, Sam and his wife got to where they were not feeling particularly respected and appreciated. In fact, Casey had gotten kind of snarky about it and just kind of became expecting, you know, entitled. What do you mean you're not going to take me right now? I got to go right now. And so it just got turned into a situation where Casey was not fun to be around anymore. And so Sam and his wife put a plan together, and they sat her down and says, Casey, your mom and I love you so much, and we really do want to help you out whenever we can. They said, lately, we just don't feel like you appreciate what we do for you. And so I tell you what, until we feel appreciated for the things that we're doing for you, you're going to have to find your own ride places. I said, what do you mean you're going to have to find my own ride? Well, we're not going to give you a ride anymore, and so you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get to practice, how you're going to get to school, how you're going to get to those different things that you need to do. And she said, well, what am I supposed to do? They said, well, some people, you know, they call a taxi. They said, in fact, I've looked up a few here. You can just call this one right here. You call them up, and they will send a taxi over, and they'll take you where you go. Oh, by the way, when you call a taxi, you have to pay them. And so you'll have to be sure and pay them. And for the next week, anytime Casey wanted to go someplace, you had to call a taxi. Now, what Sam did, though, is as he was calling friends to find out what he ought to do and what might go wrong, he had to plug a few holes. He called the taxi company. He talked to the manager of the taxi company. He explained to the taxi company what was going on and what he needed help with. And he said, and whenever she calls, would you please send your most trusted driver over here? Because I really care about my daughter. The manager said, I'd love to help you with this. And so he got all those holes filled. And then he also called Casey's friends' parents. He said, listen, we're doing a training session with Casey right now. Listen, when she calls and asks for a ride, please tell her no. We want her to learn appreciation and gratitude. And they said, after the week was over with, Casey started talking so much sweeter. Oh, Mom, Dad, if you have time, would it be all right if you take me over to get this? Or what can I do? You know, you got to take me to practice. What can I do to help get things ready so that we have time to go? And she became a much different person after she had a week of training of doing something like that. Then there was Brian. Brian's 5.5 years old. And Brian hadn't gone to kindergarten yet. He was still in the daycare. But his problem was he kept getting up later and later every morning and it was making Mom late to work. And so Mom called a bunch of friends and says, what can I do? I can't keep showing up late to work. They're going to fire me. And so I got to have some plans. So they put a plan together. So that night before the plan was going to go into effect, she said, okay, Brian, here, and she gave it kind of those paper plate clock things, you know, it says here, whenever the hands on the clock look like this up on the wall, they match that, that means the car is going to leave. And we're leaving because I've got to get you to daycare and I've got to get to work. So whatever you got to do to get ready in time, that's going to be it. Next morning comes and you can imagine what Brian did. Well, he was sat at the table all morning. He's still in his pajamas. And so Mom says, okay, Brian, time to go. And he says, but I'm not ready. She says, I know, so I'm ready. And she pulled out this paper bag. She says, I've got your clothes right in here. So let's go on out. You get ready on your way to daycare. And so off they go into the car. And he's sitting in the car, he's got his pajamas on. Of course, he can't put his clothes on in the car because he's got to have the seat belt or got to be in the seat, you know, booster seat. And so they get to the daycare and says, Mom, I'm still in my pajamas. I know, so here's your clothes. See you later. I'll see you this afternoon when I pick you up, and send him inside with his clothes in the bag. She had to plug a few calls too. She called the director of the daycare and says, doing a training session with Brian, says it'd be really helpful if you don't let him come in his pajamas. Make sure and give him a space where he can change into his clothes and then he can come in and do activities with the daycare. Will you do that? She said, sure, I'll be glad to help you with that. So after a few days of that, Brian didn't make Mom late to work anymore. See how it works? And there's no sweat to the mom in those situations. Sam, you know, he might have had a little concern about making sure that he had, made sure that the taxi driver was gonna take care of his daughter like he wanted to, all those kinds of things. But for the parent, I've got the plan put together. I'm taking care of myself. I'm making sure that I'm doing these training sessions and I can do it when I've got the energy, when I've got the time, whenever I've got a plan put into place, whenever I'm confident that this is gonna go, and I just can't wait to do it. And it's really, it's a lot of fun when you go through it and you see the changes that it'll bring back to kids. So this week, give it a try. Give kids a chance to think, to share control, make choices, experience the consequences of their actions. Put together one strategic training session. Just pick one irritating behavior that your kids have. Call some friends, come up with a plan, and see what kind of effect it has on your kid this week as you put that plan into practice.